books and things. Tonight we have a very interesting program, I think. Of course, they all are. And tonight is the first of a series of programs I'll be hosting to promote help with heroin addiction. There was a article on Facebook a couple weeks ago, and I was reading it, and it said this couple had buried their third child due to heroin overdose. And I thought, how sad. I only had one child. He died of a car accident. I know what these people are feeling, but to lose three of them. We're losing too many people to a horrible drug. And I want you to watch, take notes, and if you see someone who needs help, please help them. You may save their life. My guest today is Jack Malone. He's president and executive director of SCADD. And thanks for coming.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Tom.
We've talked a little bit, and I think the first question is, how did people get into SCADD?
It's a good question, because treatment program is where you really need to go. Someone who's engaged in this horrible business of being addicted to heroin, and we could talk for hours about how that comes to be. But the reality is that heroin is in our community like no time before. And if someone comes to the realization, I'm in real trouble with this, and I think the moment you do heroin, you're really in trouble, there are places to go. The Southeastern Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence, that's a mouthful, but that's SCADD. We've been in business for 50 years, and we operate a number of levels of treatment. But the first place to go is to the detox, because someone who is engaged in using heroin, they are addicted.
Yeah.
And it is a very, very powerfully addicted drug, and you need help to get off it. First and foremost, you need to be medically monitored to get off of it, and that's what we do. There's a number of detoxes around. SCADD is that particular kind of detox. We take care of anybody, regardless of their ability to pay. We find a way to get paid for it, but we've been there. We've been doing a detox since 1967, and we continue to do it today in a 20-bed detox, and it's medically managed and monitored 24 hours a day, and it's very safe. We like to think that people who know we're there and come and ring the bell and ask for help, and we'll get them help. That's the first and foremost thing, that someone who is engaged in drug behavior says, I need help, and know where to go, and ask for the help and be ready to accept it.
I have one question, and that's the guy that says he needs help and maybe doesn't go see you because he doesn't think he can afford it.
Good point. And there's a lot of things will keep people away from treatment. And one is, sometimes people who are not ready will engage in some kind of stall tactic and say there's no room for me there, or I can't afford it. Yeah. SCADD is not that way. We're not a rich organization, but we find ways to get people paid for. So, paying for the treatment is the last thing that somebody has to work at. We have people in our agency who can find a way. How it works is simple with SCADD. We take care of the sickest and the poorest. Most of them we get them on a state benefit, and that has a medical component that pays for treatment. But paying for it should never be that which keeps you away from getting help.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We'll find a way to get it paid for, and actually there's some people that show up and there's no way they're going to get any kind of benefit, and we're not going to get paid for it. But our charter and our makeup, we're a community-based nonprofit program. We got to take it a freebie occasionally, but our staff is pretty good at making sure that doesn't happen. The goal for the person who's addicted to say, I'm in way over my head on this. It is a deadly disease. People can die from it. They can die from any of the things that happen to them. Hepatitis, HIV is still, part of the equation. And another reality is that people who are engaged in the drug business are very dangerous. Some of them are very dangerous, and it's a very dangerous world out there. But the real key is having someone say, I had enough, I need help, please help me. And you can get into detox and get detox from the drug, but that doesn't end the process. You got to get to the next level of care. And the goal that we have and the practice that we have is you get someone into detox and medically detoxed, and then get them into the next level of care. Because the longer you can keep them away from the drug and the drug community and teach them how to live sober and be sober and about the disease that they have, the better chance you have that they'll have long-term
And
recovery.
that's a mental detax.
Pardon?
That's a mental detox.
That's a physical detox. The second part is mental. You got to learn. You got to learn you have a disease. The disease of addiction. Once you cross over into being addicted, that's a disease you have for the remainder of your life.
Yeah.
It's not going to go away. What we teach people is that you'll have it for the rest of life. You don't have to die from it. You have to work at staying sober, and there's plenty of rewards at staying sober. But you always got to be conscious that you have this addiction, and people can slip back. And heroin is one of the worst addictions to have, and the draw for many people continues. It's a very strong urge to continue to use, mostly in young people.
Now, I'm not going to pin you down for a time, but what is an average time from the entrance to the exit into your...
For detox,
Yeah.
3 to 5 to 7 days, depending on the amount of heroin you take. Another important piece of the equation is the kind of physical condition you're in at the time of detox. Now, people who are engaged in IV drug use many times have abandoned everything else, particularly their health care. So their health care and their nutrition, and they have other things that are result from the use. And as I mentioned, hepatitis or HIV, some come to us severely compromised. But the initial detox, that period of time that people know is a very difficult time when you have to detox from the substance. It's uncomfortable, but we give you medication so that you're not real sick. But you got to detox, so it can be anywhere from 3 to 5 days.
Okay.
But the lingering effects from long-term use last for longer than your detox. But again, if you're in a structured program afterwards, where you learn about the disease and learn how to stay sober, you get better. You get better.
We hope. Can you give us a detail of what your campus up there does? What's it look like?
Well, the detox is a 20-bed facility in New London, and you don't stay there long. It's for drugs, mostly heroin. These days, it's about 70% heroin, but it's for alcohol as well. And again, alcohol is another thing that requires detox, and that's a very dangerous one, by the way.
Yeah.
People who detox from heroin will say they have to feel better to die, but you won't die from it. The detox from alcohol is a very, very difficult detox that has to be monitored very closely medically, because you could have a heart attack or something.
I have a friend of mine right now in ICU with likes vodka.
Vodka is a very difficult thing to detox from.
Yeah.
We have a variety of programs, but generally a person that comes into our detox we would like them to go to the next level of care that we provide, and that's a long-term residential program that we have in Lebanon, Connecticut, where you stay approximately 3 months. There is where you get really well. There is where you get your health back. Eat properly, sleep properly, get medical care, work, get your health back. And the clinical model is teaching people about the disease and teaching people how to stay sober and how to live sober. And it's not a very technical thing. It's not a magic bullet or anything. Our model happens to be a 12-step program of recovery, Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, whatever flavor you want it in. And it's about abstinence and learning to live your life the way you're supposed to and live your life drug or alcohol free.
That's, I've been to a couple of meetings because a friend of mine went, and I found the AA meeting to be very similar to grieving. It's almost like a grieving for the alcohol.
Well, I'm
Like
not
I
going to make
grieve
light
for-
of the grieving process. I've been through the grieving process myself. There is some grief because someone loved the drug so much.
Absolutely.
Someone loved the drink so much, someone loved the drug so much,
Yeah.
and it's their old friend. And they have to come to a crossroads where they got to decide, do I want that drug to get me high, where it could kill me eventually, or do I want to live my life free? And now they're giving up their old friend. And some of them regard it as an old friend or as a lover.
Yeah.
And then, indeed, it probably is grieving for some. Myself in my sobriety, when I got sober, I was, deathly afraid that I'd never be able to have any fun anymore because alcohol provided a vehicle to have fun. Went away very quickly, and I learned how to have a good life. But yeah, absolutely couldn't be like that.
Mm.
But the 12-step programs are largely about learning how to live your life, putting down the drink or the drug, staying sober, living sober, associating with people who are sober and learning from them, how
Yeah.
they've done it. It's a remarkable model, and people who stick with it, have successful sobriety and successful lives.
Now, let me ask you about the heroin addict that's found unconscious or near death or whatever, and they shoot him with a Narcan. What happens to that person at that point? Does he go to the hospital? Does he go anywhere?
Okay, Narcan is on the market now. It's available, and it is present in many places. It's in every ambulance, and the police carry them, and it is indeed saved lives. What it does is someone overdoses, and their heart stops, and their lungs stop. They call it falling out. They administer the Narcan, which is just an aerosol, and it immediately stops the heroin from working, because that heroin is an inhibitor, and it stops your heart, and stops the breathing, and it reverses that, and you come back to life. But it's not the panacea. If you are sticking a needle in your arm and putting with heroin in it, and you fall out and you have to get revived from Narcan, you got a rip-roaring problem. You got a horrible addiction problem, and you came close to death, and you're lucky that someone is around to administer that. And it should be the eye-opener.
Yeah.
What we find is that people who get taken to the hospital in an ambulance and they get administered Narcan in the ambulance and they get to the hospital and they wake up and they're no longer high. And they started out 20 minutes ago to get high. Now they're kind of angry because the high's gone and they run out of the hospital to get more. But it should be an eye-opener, and it has saved lives. But it's not the answer. Because if you're engaged in very dangerous drug behavior, you got to stop.
Yeah.
The young people are the very difficult ones to stop. There's an adage in our business, there's no old junkies. If you're 40 years old and you're still doing dope, you're really, really taking a chance. You can OD, you can get the hepatitis, you can get HIV, which is still out there, or the other reality is the drug world is a very dangerous place, and people engaged in the distribution of drugs are dangerous people, and that's a reality.
That's why they carry guns.
Yeah, and that's a dangerous part of it.
Yeah.
The young people, and that's who we see doing heroin today, because there's so much heroin, and it's so powerful, and it's so plentiful, and it's so cheap. The young ones are difficult because they get a period of sobriety, and you say, I don't know if I want to give this up. You try it again, it might be different. That presents another problem that is very prevalent out there that we must talk about, and that is the number of overdoses. Young people who have any length of time not using the heroin, their muscle memory and their brain memory changes. So if they have just days of not using heroin and they decide to use heroin again, and their point of reference is what they did before, they do the same amount after a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. If they do the same amount they're used to, it can be very deadly immediately. That can be an overdose because the body changes that quickly.
Yeah.
The amount that they took at one time was because of the body's tolerance. Once they stopped, the tolerance diminished, and if their reference point is what they used to use, that can lead to the very hard consequence of death.
And alcoholics works very similar too.
Alcoholics?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If they start to drink, they go back to where they were. It's not like starting over
The
again.
disease of addiction progresses. And if someone who drinks alcohol stops for a period of time, when they pick up a drink again, they don't go back and get, drunk on the first drink.
No.
They pick up where they left off. And there's some medical science that says even though you don't drink, the disease progresses. So if you spent a year of not drinking, after a long period of drinking, your disease would progress to be where it might be if you drank for that whole year. And that's very complicated.
Yeah.
But that's why when you hear someone who hasn't drank for a while drinks and they go really
Quick.
over the edge,
Really
very quick. So too is the case with heroin. Your tolerance builds up and the body expects more. But the very insidious piece of any period of sobriety with the heroin is that, alcohol, drinking too much alcohol can kill you. But taking too much heroin after a period of time can kill you, is more likely to have a deadly consequence.
What should our people be looking for?
Every parent should talk to their child. I don't think a child is too young to hear about the dangers. They should be hearing about it in school. And some of it is raw. I talk to high school kids, and I always bring young people with me who are in recovery to talk about it because they don't want to hear from an old man. I know a lot about it, but if I bring a 22-year-old to talk to high school kids, they understand that. And most of the time it's, I started when I was your age, but everybody should look for it. There's certain behaviors. There's certain behaviors that are indicated, and one of the biggest indicators that families don't want to see is when stuff starts missing in the house.
Yeah.
When things start going missing in the house, and you have a suspicion that there's a problem with the child, things start missing, they don't just get up and walk away like my mother used to say.
Yeah.
Somebody's taking them, and theft is as big of a warning sign as anything.
Yeah. And who do they notify?
Well, they have to notify the person that they suspect of stealing that I'm on to you.
But is there somebody that they can call and say, hey, I think my son or daughter has a
Oh,
problem?
sure. Oh, sure. There's a variety of people, and there's people like me, and there's social workers, and there are others. You don't call the police, and the problem with the family is a very trusting and loving unit.
Yeah.
And they don't want to pull the covers on the child, so to speak. But ultimately, the family has to be the one that says, you're in trouble. We know you're in trouble. Be honest with you. We will help you.
Yeah.
And there's places to go to get help. You can call SCADD. You can call, social services. Everybody knows what you got to do. There are places to go. People say, I don't know what to do with that child. So many times I get phone calls from another person who says to me, we have a family friend who's really jammed up and they don't know what to do. I say, call me. I'll tell them. I can't cure the kid.
No.
I could get the kid into treatment if that's what he wants, but I can certainly tell the parents right off the bat what you should do, because the problem doesn't go away by saying we're just not going to do anything about it. That never works, and nothing.
And it's not controlled by areas or schools or money or
What's not controlled?
like heroin.
Heroin is in the distribution of heroin is done by people that you would not want to deal with.
Yeah.
And I tell people, and they don't believe me, or they get shocked when I say it, one of the biggest problems we have in Eastern Connecticut, because we have plenty of dope here, is Route 95. And those engaged in the distribution of cheap, powerful, and plentiful South American heroin use Route 95 like it was designed for 60 years ago. Stop at every exit. And they stop at the wealthy exits, and they stop at the poor exits. And there's we could talk all day long about that distribution system. Your police know about it, but the volume of cars coming up 95. So too with the heroin coming into this country. It comes in a variety of ways because you're dealing with people who have the money to own a 40-foot submarine, weld a refrigerator-sized box on the outside of a freighter, but too far and away, the most heroin that comes into this country comes from across the border, Ciudad Juarez or Tijuana, and those engaged in distribution will do remarkable things in cars and trucks and send it at the border. They stop one out of 10 cars, and it's a numbers game, and they still get enough heroin into this country, pure heroin, and then it's cut up, but they throw it at the heroin, and they throw it at the border in large enough numbers, so knowing someone's going to get caught, but they're going to get it through. And you think about it, every town in this country has a heroin problem.
Yeah.
And you think about the mechanics of getting heroin to places all over this country. It's scary. It scares me as I worry about how that happens, how we let it happen.
It is scary because you don't know your next door neighbor's doing it. You don't know who's doing it.
Well,
And it's
theft is a harbinger
First
of
thing.
something bad.
Yeah.
If you don't have any kids and somebody breaks into your house, somebody in the neighborhood or somebody who knows the neighborhood
yeah.
is engaged in drugs. There's drug behavior. You hear the stories about people going into houses and stealing all the copper.
Yeah.
Drug-seeking behavior done by people who want drugs.
Ah.
And I don't know all the things, but
Yeah.
if you got to steal to get drugs, you got to steal a lot.
Yeah.
If you're doing $200 worth of heroin a day, you got to steal $600-700 worth of stuff.
Oh, sure. A lot of the people that are being held up, a lot of stores that are wanting, and a lot of these thieves are crazy. I mean, they're stupid things.
The rage and the outrage of someone who is really needing the heroin, because the body screams.
Yeah.
The body screams and tells you need it. And they will do horrible things. And, some of the crimes that you hear about, it's, I see these crimes and I say, that's drug behavior. Things that people would never do when you don't have that drug in your body and your body's screaming, you'll do some crazy things, horrible things.
Now, how does it compare, the extent of the problem over the entire country,
It's all over the country.
everywhere?
It's all over the country, and I worry about the volume of heroin that's in this country. And it's remarkable. You see the news. Plano, Texas, Pocatello, Idaho, Columbus, Ohio, Sterling, Connecticut. I met someone from Sterling, and I said, where do you get your heroin? Do you got to go to Willimantic or New London or Norwich? And they told me, no, comes right into town.
And Sterling is about this big.
Yeah, and I don't want to malign that town.
No,
But,
because
that's a reality, and that's what somebody told me.
everybody
And,
is.
and if I won't say someone from Sterling told me that heroin comes into the town, I'm not being honest. And,
Yeah.
and, we have to be honest. I'll tell you a quick story if I have time. And I met
Yeah.
with my colleagues who run detoxes. There's 7 of us, and we were meeting in Hartford one Monday morning, and one of the gentlemen from the other side of the state told us that in the high school that previous weekend, they had got 17 kids at a high school function with heroin. And that's a very, very bad thing. But the offshoot of that story was that the people in the school, and this was in a community over there in the western part of the state where, they don't want people to know that, the people in the school and the police department made a conscious decision that they weren't going to let that be known because they didn't want people to think, there's heroin in the school.
Yeah.
That's irresponsible.
Yes, it is.
It's not great when you have that occur in your school, but to bury it and not talk about it doesn't help the problem. You got to deal with the problem head on.
Yeah. They had a thing at Stonington High School a couple months ago. They went in with drug sniffing dogs and checking everything. I think they found some out in the car or something in the parking lot.
Sure. I don't doubt it.
And, people are outraged, and yet other people are saying, great, because you got to find out if it is there.
You got to find out.
Because, yeah, if you don't send the dogs in, that's going to be crammed in there.
Yeah.
So we got about 5 minutes. Anything else you want to discuss?
Well, I could talk about this topic all day, Tom. I've studied it. I've been forced to study it. The reality is there's a place to go, and there's a whole system in place. Connecticut has been very good dealing with the issue for many years. SCADD's in the business 50 years.
Wow.
And we started because the community couldn't come to grips with the alcohol problem in their community.
Yeah.
And we started in 1966 to help people who, mostly an indigent male alcoholic, and very quickly we had to adapt to drugs, which arrived in the 1970s in our communities. And we've still been at that. There is a place to go. One of the things that I often struggle with is I hear people say, well, there's no detox beds. Well, there are detox beds. We have a 20-bed detox facility, and if I was there last night and there was 20 beds full.
Yeah.
But this morning, there's 17 because, it turns over. If someone calls on Wednesday afternoon and we say, we're full tonight, we'll keep them on the phone and we'll get them to arrive the next morning. Most of the times, it's not that full. You got to keep it full, but we bring them in. But someone will say, if someone's parents are pushing them to go into treatment or the boss is pushing them into treatment and they don't want to go, what do they say? There's no beds. Well, if the place is full tonight, we'll get you in there tomorrow.
Yeah.
If you're that sick and you're that desperate, you'll wait. You don't want to wait long. You got to strike while the iron's hot.
That's right.
But
They change their minds.
it turns over very quickly. We'll go get you. Everybody will go get somebody.
Huh.
They can't say, I can't get a ride there. We'll go get you. We'll get you in the next moment there's a bed available and get the process started. That's how it works with SCADD and others engaged in treatment.
Well, I think it's great. It's available. And to the audience, again, watch things that are missing, things that look strange. Your child is doing something out of the ordinary. And don't be afraid to get in their business because you may lose them. You really want to keep those children. And nothing worse than losing a child, especially to something silly like heroin. It's just, I say silly because it's just so wrong that you really don't want to hear it.
The disease of addiction, once you have it, the behavior really wants to kill you.
Yeah.
Getting sober and sobriety is that ray of life that says, no, I want to live this life.
Yeah.
But the disease is deadly.
And if anybody has quit smoking, they know what it's like.
Yep.
And I'm addicted, and it's very difficult to quit. And I have breathing problems, and I still smoke. So I'm just hoping I can last another 10 years.
I'm sure you will.
Anyway, I guess we still got another couple of minutes, but if you have any questions, call me, write me. Jack's phone number is up there. And well, that's mine now, but Jack's number is up there, and you can call him. And if you want good answers, call Jack. But
The stuff is up there.
Yeah.
My email, my work number, even my cell phone.
Yeah.
And I spend a great deal of time talking to people about what you can do. I talk to moms and dads. I talk to moms and dads who are jammed up and something happened in their family they don't know, and they're so surprised. How did heroin get in our home? This child was an angel.
Yeah.
What do we do now? And that's what I do. I have answers. I know things to do. I have suggestions, and maybe sometimes tell them this is what you must do. You must confront this child and make it clear and that you're willing to help.
Even if you just suspect something, call Jack. Maybe he can clear your mind. Maybe he can put you at ease. And I think that's what we got to do. Just got to try to curb this a little.
We must. You can't start too young talking to
And I was
the
going
youngsters.
to have another show next week that I'm not sure. I still may have another show next week. I was going to have one where the lady's son was killed because of fight, and apparently that was drug use too.
Well, there's violence out there. And
There is.
violence goes hand in hand with drug abuse.
Tomorrow is VFW Fish and Chips, and if you haven't been there, it's worth the trip. And I'd like to thank you all for watching. I want to thank you, Jack, for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks, Tom.
It's always a pleasure talking to you. Email me at santostom@comcast.net. You should be reading, and I'll see you next week.